Welcome to Current Conversations, the podcast where the pool deck meets real life. I'm Aubrey Bowles, a former Nova, Virginia, and Villanova swimmer, joined by Jeff Brown, the coach who pushed me through every lap. And together, we dive beneath the surface of the sport we both love. Each episode, we sit down with guests from across the swimming world, athletes, coaches, and trailblazers to relive the moments that shaped them, the lessons learned between the lanes, and memories that stick long after the water dries. Whether you grew up chasing the black line or you simply love a good story, you're in the right lane. Let's dive in. Today's guest is a true icon in the swimming world. He started as a swimmer in Little Rock, Arkansas, and built a coaching career that shaped generations of athletes. After nearly 4 decades at the University of Georgia, including roles as assistant and senior associate head coach, his swimmers helped bring home NCAA titles, SEC championships, and even Olympic medals. Known for developing some of the greatest distance swimmers in NCAA history, his impact spans from Athens, Georgia to the international stage. A Hall of Fame coach, master recruiter, and lifelong teacher of the sport, we're honored to have him here today. Everyone, please give it up for Harvey Humphries.
Got wave.
That's good.
The listeners might not know this because of our energy, but it's pretty early this morning. I had to set alarm early. So who got up earliest today?
I got up at 5:30.
That beats me. I got up about 30 minutes ago.
Welcome to what we did our whole lives.
Yeah, I can say I was in the pool at 5:30. I had to get everything done. So just by a little bit, though, I edged Harvey.
I had to comb my hair.
Me too. It's getting a little thin up here.
Yeah. How's the weather in Athens? The storm bite you guys?
Yeah, we got pretty much the steady stage of just ice falling out of the sky for about 6 hours on Saturday night. And then it was down in the mid-20s for 6 hours while this was happening. And then it got up to about 35 the next day, and we had another 4 hours of solid rain, almost like a rainstorm. And that since has frozen up. So currently we've been, I guess, about 24, 25 degrees for about the last 6 hours. And it's going to go up to like 35 today. And then it's going to go down to somewhere between 16 and 10 tonight.
Wow.
So my road out in front, solid white, frozen, but I haven't seen snow yet. Don't want to mess with that.
I guess 3.5, 4 hours away from you, and we're 50 degrees. So I'm going to take that. But has power been going out, or is just the roads are in bad shape?
Interestingly enough, we hadn't had any power going out hardly anywhere around here, but I think Athens is one of the biggest victims as far as just solid ice. I think they said we had 0.3 of an inch of solid ice on everything around Athens. And the main thing is we're going to be below 32 for about the next 10 days as far as our evening lows, but then we'll get into the 40s in the afternoon. So we'll figure out how much is going to melt during all this time each day. But right now, everything's shut down. School, University of Georgia, everything. They've asked the kids to go home.
Yeah, that's
what
they did here.
Yeah, they don't want to take responsibility for him, I guess. I mean, I think that's probably the thing. Go home. Get out of here. Hey, let's move to your the Harvey Humphries origin story. And Arkansas used to be called Arkansas, but I don't want to go there. Did they really have pools there when you were a kid? I mean, like give us the Little Rock and Harvey Humphries story.
Well, they did have a pool when I started. We had one pool, War Memorial Park pool, and that was built in the 30s or 40s. It had diving towers in it, and they did like diving shows and stuff. And I've got a book that's the history of swimming in Arkansas that probably everybody has that on their shelf. But one of my favorite pictures is someone diving off the tower with 2 flaming torches, one in each hand, is one of the shows they were putting on. Anyhow, the place where I learned to swim, I guess it's about a 5 or 6 story building that was like one of the big skyscrapers in downtown Little Rock at the time. This was in the 60s. And it was a 3-lane indoor pool in the basement of this building. And it was the Little Rock Boys Club. So because of the fact a lot of kids didn't have enough money to have swimsuits, we had to go to the pool Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. And we were 8 years old. And pretty much our coach wore a bathing suit, smoked a cigarette, like most of our coaches when Jeff and I were coming through were doing. He would get in the water and we would be swimming laps. But the main thing was he would not be in the water. He'd be standing up on the deck And all we did was no breathers up and down this 20-yard pool. And if you took a breath, he had a wet towel, and he was really good at hitting you on the ass with it. And he used to say, all right, now we're going to do, we do 25s. And it's really interesting because I still do some of the stuff with little kids and everything. We just do 25s over and over again, one group at a time. And you'd start every stroke with legs crossed, fists doubled up. And this is in the 1960s. And then after everybody got tired of doing that, he'd say, okay, keep your legs crossed, but open your hands. Then he'd say, all right, now you can uncross your legs. And this is all 4 strokes. This is how it worked. And everything was without a breath. Even if it was breaststroke or backstroke, you were supposed to hold your breath. And we weren't doing long underwaters, but it was like if you took a breath and he told you couldn't take a breath, you had to get out of the water. You had to walk over, grab your ankles, bend over, and he hit you on the bare. And did I tell y'all we were swimming naked?
I kind of, when you started, I thought, yeah, I think that was probably.
So we're all swimming naked. And of course, when you get hit in the ass with a towel, you get like a big red dot back there. And we're 8-year-olds. We think it's hilarious. And so we called them souvenirs. And it's like, who went home with a souvenir? And the deal was, if you got hit, and it was loud, it was like a gun going off. It was a crack next to your crack, I guess. But anyway, as soon as he did it, and everybody, if anytime anyone was going to get out and get hit, everybody started cheering because we didn't have to swim. We could watch the entertainment, the torture or whatever, the punishment. Always kids would get hit, and these tears would squirt out of their eyes, and they'd go, it didn't hurt. And then they'd walk back, and then we'd keep going again. But we did that for, I don't know how long. And then the only other thing I remember, Fridays, we were supposed to bring a bathing suit because our moms and our sisters could come down and, our parents could only watch those practice on Fridays. And the best part was every day somebody would come out of the locker room naked because he forgot it was a Friday when everybody is in there. And then that kid was just like crying and stuff and going back in the locker room.
Was that ever you?
No, I was good to go. I did everything I was supposed to. I did get a few souvenirs, but we all did.
Did he stop smoking when he whacked you with a towel, or was he able to do that at the same time?
No, he was a two-hander. He'd roll it up, and
okay.
But he was really good.
But he wouldn't leave the cigarette in his mouth?
He would when he was teaching swim lessons.
So he would even get in the pool with the cigarette?
Yeah, in the summers, he would have a straw hat. His name was Jimmy Miller, and he coached me from when I was 8 years old all the way until my junior year in high school, and he died of a heart attack on the pool deck. We were at a 3-day meet, and probably the hardest thing I went through was have someone that had coached me as an 8-year-old all the way up till I was a 16-year-old. And I lost him. He had 9 kids, and I, traveled back and forth to the pool. Well, we were in carpools, but as I got older and got into high school, we had a 50-meter pool that we built outside. It was like the second 50-meter pool, or the third 50-meter pool in the state. And he got some of our dads were doctors, dentists and stuff, and they foot the note and they built this pool, and we had a 50-meter pool out there, and he was teaching swim lessons. He started teaching them in his backyard. He had a 3-lane pool, and 8 laps of it equaled 100 meters because his dream was to have a 50-meter pool. And we used to go in there as we got older, and we left the boys club. He started his own team, and this was in his backyard, and they taught lessons all day in this pool to raise money, and his kids all taught. I ended up teaching with his kids, but we would go through their kitchen, and this house was maybe a 4-bedroom house. And interestingly enough, it's about 6 houses away from where my parents bought a house like 30 years later. So I can still walk right past that house when I used to go back to Arkansas to visit my parents all the time. And I could still see that little pool in the backyard and everything. But we would have to park in front, walk through the house, do our practice, get out, walk back through their house, all these wet kids. The floor was all coming apart, and the kitchen was right there by the door. And his wife made the best onion rings in the world. And if we were walking out, she'd be handing us an onion ring on the way out. to eat on the way to the car.
But by then, you guys had transitioned to swimsuits, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There
Yeah,
was
yeah.
yeah, you
Never
weren't
know.
walking around people's houses naked. When we got the 50-meter pool built, we were there pretty much all day long. We taught lessons. We had a practice in the morning, and we'd teach lessons after the morning practice, and then we'd have an afternoon practice after that. And I remember him telling me that I had to qualify for the regionals, and my best event was the mile. And you could do a time trial as long as you had people with 3 watches and wrote it on a card and sent it in and had someone verify it. So I had to time trial a mile every day at noon till I made the cut.
How long did that take?
About 10 days. So anyway, that was the other thing. And we didn't have any indoor water. So we left the gas on and pretty much swim outdoors all year long for 2 years. And we got pictures of it with snow all over the deck and us in the water. And you could swim halfway out in the pool. When you got out to the middle, one person could finish the next 25, and then we'd be waiting on him at the drains, and we'd all sprint in because he couldn't see through all the steam coming up. And they had also, the heaters were on steps on either side. We could get in there and hide on the heaters. But the best thing was when we had the big fire, and we had a kid that really hated the cold. And so he stuck all of his stuff next to the space heater in the locker room. Halfway through practice, we saw his smoke coming out of the locker room. His damn bag's on fire. His clothes are on fire. So we're running in and out of water. It was a bucket brigade putting a fire out in the locker room. But when you'd go out there and it was 20 degrees out, your feet would like stick to the ice as you were going out. But it was fun to take snowballs when people were taking a breath, try to hit them in the face.
Harvey, your stories remind me that we coaches and the swimmers of today are just pale shadows of the past. And this is a great story for this coach. Oh my goodness.
The other thing that was kind of cool was it was outdoors, but it was in the woods. And we had a lot of critters that would get in the pool. And during the year, there were water bugs as big as your hand that had, you know, the 2 pinchers on the front and the big legs. And they would be swimming around. And of course, the leaves were falling in the fall. And the cool thing to do was and everybody was like creeped out by the bugs. So if you took a leaf when a girl was swimming by and just threw it right against her face, they would come undone. It was great. We used to do stuff like that, but we had found snakes in the pool. We had a beaver in the pool once. Anything that would think it was a pond was in there at one time or another. And before we got this outdoor pool, he used to take us out to Chenault Mountain, and he had a little cabin. He called it the Sugar Shack. And we would go on, quote, a camp out, and we had to make our own fires, cook our own food and all that stuff. So it's mainly sticking a hot dog on a stick and eating it for 2 days while we were out there camping. But he had this creek, and he had Clorox bottles, and he had 2 lines of them. And he measured 50 meters because, like I said, his dream was this 50-meter pool. So we were swimming in his yard short course meters at 8 laps was 100. And then we were in the creek, and he had a 50-meter deal in the creek. And you could go in there, and of course that was cold, you know, not in the wintertime, but even in the summers it was pretty cold. But I remember the first time I had to go out there, and he kept us there for like 2 hours, going back and forth between those real workouts. You know, all the strokes and everything. And I never forget the first time we went out there. I'd never been out there. I was finally old enough to go. And I got out there, and immediately he goes down to the creek, and he's got this big stick, and he is beating the shit out of the water. And then he sticks a stick under this snake and lifts it up and drops it out. He goes, okay, let's go. And that was practice.
Now, you said you had to start fires out there. The kid who put his bag next to the space heater, was he like a special?
He was a pro.
Was he a special asset in that situation?
Well, that's how he started his fires. See, he had to bring his old clothes because he thought that was the best way to get one started. And, you know, eating a hot dog's been cooked on dirty underwear. I mean, you had to be a badass to eat that stuff.
So let's go to your swimming career, you know, in Georgia. Were you recruited, walk on? How was that deal?
I was trying to talk my way into anything and anywhere I could go to actually be on a swim team. I was 103 pounds my freshman year in college.
Really? Because I saw something that said you were 100 pounds.
103. I want to make sure everybody knows the truth.
The man has dignity, Aubrey. Come on.
My fault.
And we shaved our heads and stuff. So everybody else looked like these real big, guys that were bodybuilders and stuff. And I looked like somebody's brother. I was just skinny and tiny. And I remember I wanted to go to school somewhere besides Arkansas or the state of Texas because we were in the Southwest Conference. And everybody, if you didn't go to school at the University of Arkansas, you went somewhere in Texas. And I said, I want to kind of go somewhere different. And I looked at the Southeast Conference. And at the time, I was going to be a veterinarian. And there were two schools that had a vet school at that time. One of them was LSU and one of them was Georgia. And I didn't know too much about Georgia, but, I duck hunted down in LSU, in Louisiana and stuff. And so I thought that'd be kind of cool. And I went down there, and Ted Stickles was the coach there. And he was, I think he was an Olympic gold medalist. I know he was an NC2A champion in the 200 IM. And I remember I went down there. He took one look at me and he goes, I don't know that you're going to really be big enough to make our team. He goes, but if you want to come here and be a manager, I'd love to have you, or something like that. And I said, well, I really want to be on that team. So the next place was Georgia. And I had a cousin that actually, that's a whole nother story how he got to the University of Georgia, but he was a professor in the business school. And so I went there and he took me around campus, and then he took me into Atlanta, and I got to watch a Hawks game with Pete Maravich playing and watched him score 35 that day. He took me around campus. I hadn't met the swim coach or anything. He just took me around campus, and then I thought it was great. It was really pretty. The whole thing about Athens reminded me of Little Rock, because in Arkansas, there's mountains up in the north, a lot of rice fields and stuff in the south. And in Georgia, there's a lot of peanut, farmland in the south. There's mountains in the north, just like in Arkansas. And the people were real friendly. And I thought, okay, I can go away from home, but this will remind me of home. And Arkansas back then had about 100,000 people. Athens was more like 30,000 people at the time. And then they'd have another 30,000 when school was in.
Mhm.
But so anyway, I went around, then I met the coach, and his name was Pete Sholey. And he goes, well, we don't have anybody that'll do distance. And he said, I can give you a walk-on spot if you can swim distance. And I was like, I think I was like 17:30 or close to 18 minutes. And I was like I don't know, maybe a 5:20 or something in the 500. And I said, well, I'll do it. I'd love to do it. So I end up going there, and literally for 2 years, my events were the 1,000 and the 500. And of course, I was racing Casey Converse and all these guys. They were lapping me like halfway through, but we all knew each other, and, we all got to be friends at, all the different schools. So anyway, I got to Georgia, and I got in the weight room, dropped the barbells on my neck, and it didn't have anything on it but the bar. I was kind of really battling my way just to be on the team. And I bulked myself up to 128 by my senior year. I ended up doing some sprints then. I was swimming for Jack my freshman year, actually, which was kind of cool. And he had hair down to his shoulders. He had the body of Adonis, and every girl in the Athens and surrounding towns knew who he was. We thought he was a god. We all wanted to be like Jack when we grew up. And he could play. He's a great basketball player. And if he even spoke to you, and this is when no one even knew who he was a grad assistant. Oh, I would have walked through a wall for that guy. And it was cool. He would go out, he'd have some girlfriend in Atlanta, and he would drive into Atlanta, and he'd spend the night over there, and then he'd get back for morning practice. It was just like you thought anything he told you could do it. And it was just such a great thing for me to be able to do that. And he was there my freshman year. Swimming with him, I think I got down under 17 minutes, and I ended up going, I can't remember, but when all the dust settled, I finished up at Georgia going like 21.5 in the 50 and 144 in the 200 free. And I think I was a 445 or something like that in the 500 and 16:30. And that was good enough to make the traveling team. And my best story was I came really close to not making it my senior year. And our coach said, well, we're going to put all you guys together, and whoever we're going to do you're going to do a 50 free, and whoever the top two guys are going to go on the traveling squad. And everybody's like, okay. And we're doing it the next day. And everybody showed up, and I showed up, and I had shaved down and shaved my head. And they were like, "You asshole," they were, "I can't believe it, you son of that's bullshit. Why are you?" And I said, "It's gonna be look, I swam all year, and if it's gonna be my last swim, I'm doing my best time."
I love
And I
that.
kicked everybody's ass, and I got to go. And, I mean, I was like, it's gonna be my last swim ever. But I was good enough then where I actually got to swim on a relay at conference. But back up, my freshman year, my favorite story was I got to make the conference team somehow. I think I looked at our media guide and it hit me like a week ago. There were only 17 guys on the team, so I was going to go no matter what. I never ever really realized that. I thought they'd just leave me because I wasn't any good. But I got to swim in the first heat of the first event of SECs. And it was me and it was, get this, 3 guys from LSU and me.
Oh.
And I got in there and I was a pretty good workout swimmer. And I got in there and I started swimming and I'd never been under 5 minutes. And I think I went like a 4:51 or something like that. And I won the heat. And when I was walking back, I had to walk past the LSU guys. And Coach Stickles put his hand on my shoulder when I was walking by and he goes, "Well, Harvey, I guess you showed me I made a big mistake." And for him to even remember who I was, it really meant everything. And one of the things I remembered after that was it's okay to compliment a kid from another team. They're going to remember it more than anything else. And I never ever tried to talk someone into, it wasn't like tampering. It was just if I saw somebody do a good swim, I would tell them.
There's always there's kind of that worry. I mean, I know you're an age group coach, but kind of as an age group coach, it almost looks like recruiting. But in college, they're a little more locked down. But Harvey, one thing to put out there for everyone, boy, what a pump up for your team! That first heat swimmer winning the first heat is always a huge pump up for the team. Doesn't matter the time. It's just like, wait a minute, we won the first heat. We're on. We're on.
Yeah, but it was a big drop, and everybody was like, "God, if Harvey did it, we're
Yeah.
all faster than Harv, and he just went faster than us." And it was funny. For the next 3 years, I swam the 500 in the first heat at SECs, and it got to the point where they knew I was going to go fast in that first heat, and I was undefeated at SECs in the 500 in the first heat every year. But I always did best times. And maybe the fact how I approached a taper and everything, I just thought go as fast as you can. And then when you just get to go home earlier and all that, that's your rest. And when you do less and less, but I just felt like, gosh, this is going to be the best part of the season because I get to swim as fast as I can. And I know I'm not going to be as tired and stuff. So I didn't worry about just wondering what was going to happen to me. I just want to go fast every day. And I try to explain to kids, it's not your last meet. It's what you get to do really all the way into your last meet that should be like recess. It should be really fun. And I think we've had over the years, we had kids that always appreciated that. And we didn't really have a lot of kids that messed up at the end. And I still, different ability levels and stuff, but I just, can't fathom a kid not swimming fast at the end. And I think the kids tend to go along with that. And I guess all the guys I swam with, even back on my club team when the college guys were there, you remember that song by Stevie Wonder? And he said, "I feel better today than yesterday, but not as good as tomorrow." Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
So
I
this
know it, I
guy,
know it.
this guy Trip Strauss, he swam at Yale when I was swimming at Georgia, and this summer he'd always come walking in every day, going, "My taper is better today than yesterday, but not as good as tomorrow." And he would sing that every day coming in, and it made me think about it, all years later. Anyway, I guess I'm rambling a little bit. Y'all got to put a little break on me every now and then
Oh,
because I
Harvey,
do like to talk.
well, we can always edit things out, but we'll move on. You said, I know your father was a veterinarian, right?
No, my dad was a
Was
children's
it
dentist,
a dentist? Okay,
pedodontist,
so you started as a what did you end up as your major? I mean, did you started out
microbiology.
and you started out looking at veterinarian school?
No, I didn't. I wanted to go to
Okay.
vet school, but probably what happened was drinking age was 18 when I went to school. And I found out that I was a very social person more than I thought. And I wanted to be around people more than I wanted to be around animals. As much as I loved animals, and that's a whole nother story about all the critters I used to catch and keep and all that stuff. So anyway, I thought, well, maybe I'll be a doctor because I'm taking the same classes. And then it got to the end and I said, well, maybe I ought to apply to dental school and med school. So I applied to med school and I didn't get in. I applied to dental school and I got in. So I said, well, shit, I'll go to dental school. So I went to dental school and I went there the first year and then I realized, God, I've got to do all this stuff with my hands. And I was one of those kids that couldn't draw and I flunked shop class. I couldn't saw a straight line. I couldn't hammer a nail. I'd bend it. So I was tearing shit up left and right, trying to put crowns on and wax crowns and all this stuff. And I mean, I had an aha moment in dental school. I was trying to wax a crown and we had lunch right after this. So you're in this class for like 3 hours every day, learning the anatomy of every single tooth. And I'm doing a certain tooth and I've got to just with drops of wax, adding a droplet at a time, form every cusp, every fossa, every angle, the exact curvature of the tooth. And you're supposed to do this just with, kind of something that looks like an Explorer, in dentist use. And of course, you can keep some pantyhose in your pocket. You can kind of rub it. It'd look really damn good. You can kind of shape it with your thumb if you're not getting caught. So I take it up there and I'm thinking I'm going to, at least get this thing passed so I can go to lunch. And I walk in there, I take it up the front and I show it to him and he goes, Mr. Humphries, are you turning this in? Is this for your grade? And I went, yes, sir. Pretty good, huh? And he goes, class, everybody pay attention. And he sticks my tooth that I'd created in a block of clay and he puts the camera on it. He goes, all right, I want all of you guys to look at what Mr. Humphries has turned in. And I said, well, and he goes, now, this is what I want. So he picks up something and he's doing I've worked 3 hours on this thing and he is talking and doing this thing in a matter of a minute or two, explaining what he's doing, the whole thing. Then he hands me that tooth and hands me his tooth. And I got them in each hand. And of course, got to remember, I'm in Tennessee. I'm in Memphis because we don't have a dental school in Arkansas. But, the people from Arkansas get to go and take some spots there. So they know I'm one of the Arkansas guys. And they think we're there because we don't have a dental school and we're dumber than anybody in Tennessee as it is. So I'm holding these two pieces, these two teeth. And he looks at me and he goes, all right, now, do you see what I want? And I said, yes, sir. He said, you have any questions? And I go, yeah, I got one question. He goes, all right, Mr. Humphries, what's your question? I said, well, which one of these is yours? And everybody just starts dying laughing. And he looks up at me and he goes, Mr. Humphries, you're an asshole. That was my kind of aha moment that I probably wasn't going to finish dental school. But I called my dad and, at Christmas time, and he said, stick around for a year. And if you still feel that way, I'll support you being a swim coach. And he said, but I don't want you to leave. He says, the graduate school opportunity that we've already paid for, said, that's going to help you in coaching. That'll help you with your anatomy. It'll help you with your physiology. It'll help you with, all the things that you will. And I did. I took a lot of it. I mean, for as dumb as I sound, I could pretty much talk to any doctor about anything and understand what they were saying. And, as far as physiology goes, I could dumb it down where people could understand it. And so anyway, I called Jack and said, Jack, I think I might want to coach. And I'd been coaching summer league every summer through there. And I'd worked with a lot of kids and coached and a lot of people. That's all they did was tell me I was a good coach and that I was great with kids. And I had taught kids swimming lessons since I was 14. My dad was a pedodontist. I'd work with kids. I'd go into his office and work there and I would sit with kids while they were getting worked on. If he did an emergency, I was going in there and handing him the instruments and everything. So I did have a good feel for that stuff. And I did enjoy being around kids. And I think that's kind of where my love from coaching came. But Jack goes, are you kidding me? You want to go? Don't do that. And I said, well, I'm going to go to Dynamo if not, because Pat Hogan told me he wants me to come over there and coach with him because he's seen the summer league kids I've coached, but I'd rather go with you. And he goes, well, if you're going to do it, I'll take you. I want you. But I don't want to be known as the guy that talked you out of dental school. And so anyway, I went with Jack and that was literally that was how it all got started, which That's a whole nother story.
Okay. So your story, I'm struck by how similar it is to Bernardino's story. We just talked to Mark last week, which you can catch up on if you go to our podcast or the Instagram. And Mark was going to be was a coffee salesman. And he just decided that he liked the excitement and everything that coaching offered a lot more. So it's a very, very similar story. And both of you rose to fame and glory coaching distance swimmers. Did you see each other as rivals, spit in each other's lanes when your swimmers came up against one another?
Well, let me tell you, Jack and Mark grew up swimming against each other when they were little kids in Pennsylvania. And he knew Mark since he was a little kid. So Mark and Jack were really good friends. And so I was a good friend because I was hanging out with Jack when he was hanging out with Mark. But Mark's older than me. He's about Jack's age. He might even been a little older than Jack. I'm not sure. But no, we would always. Here's my thought about coaches. I don't think there was ever a coach I could say I hated.
I wish I could say that.
Harvey,
Well, I'm just going to tell you straight up. In my mind, it was this. We're going to coach a lot of kids and we're going to think the world of them, but then they're going to be gone. And if I'm going to coach, I'm going to be with these coaches the whole time I'm coaching. And my goal was to make sure that I had a good relationship with everybody, even the people that other people might have thought the guy was an asshole. I can find something good in everybody. And I really wanted those coaches to know I respected them, and I want them to know that the only way I'm ever going to learn anything is just listen to them, because I've never been smart enough to do any of this by myself. I've just listened to other coaches and tried things, and then maybe I'll say, well, I think if I do this, it might work better. I always felt like I could go talk to any coach about anything at any time, and I never really looked down on anyone. I respected people and I thought the world of them, but I always felt like I could talk to them. Like if they were older than me, I felt like I could talk to them like I'd talk to my dad or something. And I could kid around with them. We could joke with each other. And I think that would be a good lesson for other coaches to learn, because your relationships that you have with other coaches are going to go way further than almost anybody you've ever coached, just because you're going to see them so much. And we are busy. I mean, talking to Tommy Jackson, about it, we're the only job where our children are allowed to interrupt us and we don't tell them, can't you see I'm talking to a grown-up? And you can be talking to a grown-up about anything and you stop in the middle of a sentence when a kid walks up and the other guy says, well, I can already see him coming. I'll talk to you later.
I kind of envisioned, with you and Bernardino that, maybe if there was any hint of a rivalry there, we could do like a pay-per-view where you could race Bernardino and we would film it, narrate it, and then we'd sell it on pay-per-view. What do you think about my idea?
I think it would be like watching Gone with the Wind. It would just never end as far as the race.
Let's move on to a little more personal subject. So, I mean, everything you say just is so, I mean, this is probably the longest conversation I've had with you, even though we've had conversations over the years, and you're just confirming the things I thought about you. Describe the courtship of your wife, because this has got to be a good story.
Oh, God.
How did she end up with you?
I can bring her in right now and tell her.
How did you end up with her? Go ahead.
It was pretty interesting. As a young coach in Athens and coaching women, I understood real quick, and this is before we had to take all these tests that, and all the bad things about coaches doing the wrong thing and everything were out there.
Safe sport.
Yeah, it basically, I realized that when I was doing this, because of how many hours I was working. I mean, I was coaching college, but I was also coaching the club team, and we were swimming from 7 to 9 o'clock every night. And then I was going back and getting on the phone and doing recruiting calls, and we were doing 4 morning workouts a week. And I think might have been 6 to 7:30 or something like that back at that time. And so I was going 4 mornings, and then I was doing a Saturday morning with the college team, and we did our night workout 7 to 9, and then we did a Sunday morning because we couldn't use the pool on Saturdays. Because lots of times in my college town, you can't do it because they shut the campus down. You'd be losing all your Saturday practices in the fall, even for that. But so anyway, I'm thinking I'm probably never going to get married. It's just I don't have time, and B, there's really no way I can go find anybody that's close to my age in this town without going out and being seen in the bars and stuff like that. So one thing I learned about Jack, he kept his private life very far away from the kids. And he was kind of my role model as a coach, and I was going to do the same thing. And, we really kept our distance. We didn't ask girls questions about things they did outside the pool. We didn't get into conversations like that. We told stories. We talked to them about their academics and making sure they were okay and being good outside the pool. We didn't give a crap who they were dating. We didn't even know. We didn't want to know, any of that kind of stuff. So I felt like I needed to I couldn't be around if I was going to, and, kids are 18 and, we didn't want them drinking. And I was like, well, the last thing I can do is go out and be seen even having a beer, because I'm going to ask them not to do it. And that means I'm not going to do it either. Now, granted, I love a drink, and I grew up learning to drink when I was 16 in the Duckwoods, drinking whiskey when the sun was coming up. But I knew there was a time and a place. My parents drank all the time, but they knew there was a time and a place. And if I did it, it was, in the home. It wasn't in public, and it certainly wouldn't be around any parents or even have anything around the other parents. But getting back to this, so I was pretty relegated, and there were a lot of coaches that there was many divorce coaches out there than coaches that were married, just because of their wives got into something that they knew they couldn't handle. And I was a huge football fan. One of the things I did, I'd go to a high school football game with a friend, whoever, and we'd watch high school football, and then we'd watch college football the next day. And we had a really good team right here in town, Clark Central High School. So in the early 80s, like 82, they were ranked number 1 in the country in the USA football poll. And the other public school in our city was Cedar Shoals, and they were ranked number 8 in the country. And they were playing each other like a mile from the college. And I'm like, damn, I can't wait to go see this. So me and our diving coach, we go there, and we get there, and it's freezing cold outside. The stadium is packed, so we're sitting in the end zones that don't have seats on the ground. And I walk in there, and I sit down. I went and got coffee, and our diving coach went and got the seats, and he got us a seat, and I found him. And I sit down, and there's this girl sitting next to me, and I start talking with her, and and she tells the story that I never shut up, and I watched the game, but yeah, I did talk with her some, and and I found out she wasn't in college, and I found out that she liked to play tennis, and I found out her dad's name. And her dad's name was George Peary, P-I-R-I-E. Well, I thought she said Perry. So anyway, I said, well, maybe we can play tennis sometime. And I thought, okay, because she's not in school, she's not a student, maybe, just be somebody I could play tennis with. And, just maybe see a female and be okay. And so time goes by, and I look up all the Perrys, and there's no P-E-R-R-Y in the phone book. And Jack's like, and the other thing was, when I came to Athens, Jack and I ended up living in an apartment together because I didn't have a place, and we shared an apartment, and he was dating his first wife, and I was kind of just hanging out. And he was like, Harv, you got to get out, do something, that kind of thing. You can see Jack doing that. And so Jack was playing a lot of tennis, and he goes, her name is Wendy Perry. He goes, oh, I play tennis with her dad, George. And I go, great. And so days go by, and I couldn't find it in the phone book, so I just forgot about it. And he goes, well, have you not tried to call Wendy? And I said, no, couldn't find it in the phone book. And I looked for George Perry. He's not in there. Of course it is. And he grabs it, and then I see that the name was spelled wrong. So then I called, and her sister picked up the phone, and Wendy says, she goes, hold on, I'll get her. Now, Wendy's side of the story was she remembered me. I was obnoxious, and she did not want to talk to me, but she was home, and she was a dental hygienist, by the way, and her dad was the dentist at the university. So we had some stuff in common because both our dads were dentists, and she was a dental hygienist and stuff like that when we were talking. And so anyway, called her up. We started playing tennis, and we had a good time. And then when we started dating a little bit, had a good time. And after about a year or two of this, we shared the same apartment. And I was drinking some beers with her brothers. She had 3 brothers, and they were all cross street. And there was place Steve Reno's where we were drinking beer. And I thought to myself, you know what? And our place is right across the street. I said, I really like her family. I like her mom, her dad. We get along pretty good. Maybe we ought to get married. And I walked across the street. She was in the shower. And I said, hey, I need to talk to you. And she goes, well, give me a towel. And I said, well, first, let me ask you something. I said, would you like to get married? And she goes, hand me the towel. And I said, well, give me an answer. And she goes, yes, I want to get married. Give me the towel. So that's how it is. We've been married. I guess we're going into our 42nd year. 42 years. And the big part is she's telling me right now, her mother swam, and she was one of the top swimmers in Long Island. They were all from up north, her family. Wendy also, so all of her kids swam on a swim team, and Wendy swam on a swim team. She came to Georgia, and I never knew her when she was at Georgia, but she did water ballet then. But she'd been around swim teams and swim pools all the time. And so the whole time we were dating, I would finish practice, and then we'd go out to dinner between 9 and 10 o'clock. And then, she'd get and go back and do her stuff.
So this was so basically what you're telling me is your courtship was another swimming in the first heat moment.
Yes, you're right.
Let's keep it rolling. Tell us about your children real quick, where they are, how many you got, how old they are.
We've got 2 kids, Billy and Peary, and Billy's 37 and Peary's 35. And they both grew up here in Athens. We're still in the same house they were born in. And they both grew up going to the public schools in Athens. Let's see. We say they got their education on Baxter Street because the elementary school is the furthest away from the university. And this road goes into down a hill towards the University of Georgia. And the middle school and then the high school, they were all on that road. Peary started at the University of Georgia, took a few courses, and then she went to Georgia Southern so she could swim. And Billy, he went to the University of Georgia, got a degree in finance there. And I coached both my kids when they were seniors. They both swam. And when they were in the senior group, they both swam for me. One of the best stories, and coaches would probably like to hear this. Jeff, you know how it is. You're a coach and everybody knows who you are. And if you've got kids, everybody knows who your kids are if they're swimming. So one of the officials came up and he said, you need to hear what Billy said to me. And I go, shit, what did he say? And he goes, he was walking by and I said, so Billy, what's it like riding home from practice every night with the coach? He goes, I don't. I ride home with my dad. And I thought, I got to chill. And I thought that was great. But if I fast backward it, when they were growing up, I was, I had a night where I was off practice. And so I was able to put them to bed. And so we even got a picture of me in the bed with, it's a single bed and there's a kid on each side of me and I'm reading to them. And they finished reading and I said, okay, you guys, time to go to bed now. And Billy looks up at me and he goes, well, Daddy. And I said, yeah. He goes, when do we get to go over and see your house? And I went, ooh. And I said, well, this is my house. And from that day on, I made it a rule with the age group coaches that everybody had to take one night off a week. And someone was going to cover. And if it was a younger coach, then they just got more reps and they got to coach. And that helped them be a better coach because they knew every week they were going to have to run one by themselves. So that was one thing. And then the other time, because I had practices on Sunday mornings and stuff, and in the summers, we'd be running camps. So we'd go literally 8 weeks and never have a day off. Stuff like that, and which we all did it. And somehow I'd gotten home on a Saturday and I got in bed and I actually was going to get up and wake up with Wendy on a Sunday morning. And Billy had come into the room and toddled in there and said, good morning, Your Majesty, or whatever he would say to, Wendy every day. And she'd go, good morning, Billy. And Billy jumped in the bed and he goes, Mommy, there's a man in your bed. And she goes, well, that's Daddy. And he goes, is it my daddy? And that's when I went, well, who else daddy sleeps in here, Billy? And of course, Wendy's punching me by then. But so, yeah, there were some aha moments where I realized, and that always kind of made me reel back and think a little bit more about my family. But my kids now, Billy went to, he ended up going to grad school in Oklahoma and in finance, and he did sports business. And then he moved into gifts and donations, and he got a job at the University of Texas about I guess he was on his drive of shame because he'd been to all these interviews and nobody told him because he didn't have enough experience. And I bumped into Carol Capitani and she said, well, looks like we're doing some new stuff. Maybe if Billy got his name in there, and it turned out the person that was the compliance person with us was an AD over at Texas then. And so I just called and just said, look, I think Billy's going to apply. She goes, well, we better do it quick because, they close tomorrow. And he put something in and she looked at it and they hired him at the University of Texas to do gifts and donations for the athletic department. So he was there for about 10 years and then he got courted away. One of the big donors really liked working with him. So he had him come and work with his company. And then another company of some of the donors that he knew has him now moving into another business. So he's doing that. He's married. And my daughter really loved visiting Austin so much when she got her degree in real estate. She was doing real estate here in Athens, and then she ended up taking the test and then went down to Austin, and now she's been doing real estate in Austin for residential stuff for I don't know how long. And interestingly enough, she is coaching with Mike Latia at Longhorn Aquatics now and is working as his assistant and coming in, loving it and working with him and those kids. And so I've actually, when I've gone to visit a couple of times, Mike said, well, can Harv come down and do a practice with us? And so I remember when we played Texas, even the next morning, I was there with Perry and Mike was like sending something. Well, I'm not going to be there. Can Harv write the workout? So
Wow,
it,
put you
it
on the
turns out
spot.
I've been over there about 5 or 6 different times, where me and Perry have coached them together. But, and they always like my stories. So, but anyway, so she's doing that. They're both real happy and we see them all the time because they want to come back and go to football games. And I just was able to do some quail hunts with my son here. And Perry and I have gotten to do, we're doing a little bit more elementary shooting with her at gun ranges and sporting clays and stuff like that. They're both doing real well. Billy and I got to go on a pheasant hunt in South Dakota with Mark Dilla's dad. He'd been trying to get us out on a hunt, and Mark had a new baby, but he still had Billy and I go out there. I do have good relationships with parents. And more often than not, I've got really good relationships after their kids finish swimming with a lot of them that I wished I could have been closer to them at the time, but I didn't want to look like I was playing favorites with anybody.
From being a swim coach, a good warm up is always necessary, and then a nice little preset is smart before you really get into the big stuff, the meat and the potatoes. So this next segment is called sipping and swimming. So it looks like you got coffee. I got my my nice milk. There might be some
Coconut
rum
rum's
in
good
here.
in a milk.
Exactly. Yep.
You can put coconut rum in a urine test and it'll taste good.
Right, Jeff? Isn't that right?
Harv's the man. He's our reference here. You got to yield the stage on that one.
All righty. So we'll get into just 5 rapid fire questions. These were the same questions we asked Bernardino. So we just want to kind of see what you have to say about these questions too. All right. So if you could ban one pool habit forever, what's gone immediately?
Stopping at any point in time in a set.
Do your swimmers often do that? Or do they
They
often
like
do
to
that?
try it.
What was always your response?
Well, here's the problem. Lots of times if they stop nowadays, you're thinking, okay, is this something that, a girl needs to get out of the water real quick and real fast and take care of something? Or if it is any type of a situation that could be an emergency, I think you have to listen to them. I mean, I was in a situation with Crow Thorson where he's one of the toughest kids that I ever had. He swims at Emory now. And he was really struggling. This kid never gets out. It was at a Christmas training practice. He was home for Christmas. And he started really not looking good. And he got out and I was sitting in a chair and I said, "Are you okay?" And he goes, "My chest just hurts." And I said, "Well, that's not good." I said, "Anything else?" And he goes, "Well, I feel like I'm going to throw up." And I said, "Okay, I want you to take some deep breaths. You calm down a little bit." And then it kind of still was a little bit bad. And I'd had open heart surgery. And I said, I think, and I got his sister out. I said, "You need to call your mom and dad. I think, we might need to get him out of here and have him go get looked at." And so anyway, I got on the phone. I said, "Look, I think Crow's having some kind of issue with his heart. It's not like we need to do CPR or anything like that, but I don't like the symptoms he's showing because it sounds like a heart attack. And could you all just come over here and get him and take him straight to urgent care or emergency room, have somebody look at him? I mean, he's talking, he's conscious. So I think that might be a good idea. And it turned out they came and got him, and he was in an ICU unit that night, and it turned out he did have a mild heart attack.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so that's why I do take what they say seriously. I've always done that. I'll have them just do breathing exercises or sit by the side. But I mean, it was a situation where I was pretty confident. I said, don't go home, go straight to the hospital. And of course, their dad's head of one of the academies. So immediately he knew some doctors. He had some people over there waiting when he got there, and he didn't go home after that. They had him, and he was out for a year, but he's back swimming now at Emory. He's able to finish his senior year.
What's the most dramatic excuse you've heard for being late to a practice?
The most dramatic excuse for being late to practice.
Implausible will work here too.
Implausible. Pretty much I think they all stay along the same thing.
Like, dog ate my homework.
Okay, I'll tell you the one I heard this year. 2 guys were late for practice because they were screwing around, and one of them slammed his brakes on, and the other guy rear-ended him.
Geez, sounds like
they were
like
playing with each other.
here.
And
Sounds like somebody.
I was like, well, that was really dumb.
If being a swim coach never worked out, what would you be doing, or what would your dream job be?
Teaching history.
What kind of history?
American history. And I've always loved it. And I love, historical stuff. I've loved it, read a lot of books. And I do campus tours at the University of Georgia. Every recruiting trip, we've been doing foot tours, and I go back because we're the oldest state chartered university in the country. And, and there's all kinds of stories about it. And I'm still shocked to this day that I can take kids on a recruiting visit in this day and age. And our coaches are like, still, Harv, can you do some tours? Get another group of recruits and parents coming in. But I think telling stories, I love talking to kids about all kinds of things. And, when they come on deck. But stories about history, I think, are fascinating. And I would love to just instill that interest in history and that I have to kids. And I think sitting around with high school kids and talking to them about anything is pretty damn entertaining.
Favorite place you've visited on a swim trip?
A place?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, gosh. Well, I've done a lot, but probably the most interesting place was Bangkok for World University Games. And then I don't know if y'all know Yet Lim, who coached the Marietta Marlins in our area, but he grew up in Malaysia, and him and I got to be great friends. We're about the same age, and we both started coaching in Georgia, and we were on the deck a lot together, and he invited. And what I did after the trip to Bangkok, when we finished World University Games, the cool part was we went to Singapore. This is 2008, and we were able to test out the accommodations and training area, the Singapore Island Country Club, and the hotel that they were going to use for our Olympic team when they did their camp. So we were going to the pool with our World U kids, and we had waiters with silver trays bringing us coffee on the deck. Urbanchek was there and all these other guys. So we're on this trip, and we're getting treated like this. We're going into the place, the diner, the breakfast area and the hotel. Shangri-La was the name of it. And they had the honey was coming out of a honeycomb with bees in the serving line. There was a spigot at the bottom where their bee honey was coming out, put on your food. It was, this is just like place I've never been. And so then we go to the actual competition site. We're staying in the dorms at this place in Bangkok, and all the Big Ten guys are there. We had the coaches from Minnesota, Ohio State. It will come to me, the names, but these guys were all in there, and I was one of the guys in there. And we go from the Shangri-La to actually going into this dormitory, and we traveled all day, and we got there, and it was at night, it was dark, and we were all sharing the rooms. Like, we had cots in a big common area and then one bathroom, and I go in there, sit down to go to the bathroom, and I'm in my gym shorts and barefoot, and about a 7-inch, 8-inch centipede went right across my feet. And I thought, well, this is really different. And when we were going to the venue, we could either walk or we could ride bikes that were kind of parked along the road. And then you left them again. But there were these canals and there were these huge monitor lizards that were the size of alligators that were on the sides of the canals. And so that was pretty cool in Bangkok. And then when I went to Malaysia to visit Lim, he just told us to get on a plane. It was like $15 to get on a plane and fly from Bangkok down to Penang. So we go to Penang, and I'd always wanted to see the Snake Temple of Penang. And so I went there, and Lim took me and Wendy there. It was closed, but they had some stuff out back. And so we went back there, and they had a reticulated python in this cage, and it was probably over 25 feet long. And I got a picture of me because the guy let me go in the cage with it, and Wendy was about to crap. But I figured, well, if they said it's not going to hurt me, then, but, those are really dangerous snakes. And I got in there and I'm squatting down and I'm petting and I got my hand on it. And if my hand is this big, you can't see the other side. You can't see both sides of the snake if you zoom in on my hand. And so anyway, I'm in there with that. And then the next thing I know, he's got the next cage and there's a cobra in there. And he opens the door and he's going like this to it. And the thing's sitting in a thing and it starts flaring out. So he goes, now you want to do that? And I said, no, I'm drawing the line there. And then I looked down, he's got this black arm and it's all shriveled up. And I said, what happened to your arm? And he goes, that guy got it.
Great.
That's crazy.
That was probably my most interesting swim trip. And then I did have, we had one of our swimmers there, Claire Moss, and she was her last swim ever and she medaled. So I thought that was real cool. But there's always stories, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I'd say that's definitely one of the top ones up there for a swim trip place.
Yeah.
Last one. Who would you pretend that's coconut rum in there? Who would you want to share a sip with the most? It can be dead or alive, anything.
My dad. I'd like to have him back. But if it was somebody I've never met before, you'd figure somebody would have asked you this question so many times, you just have a stock answer.
Think history, Harv. You're a history buff.
I know.
Hey, I got an idea. How about having a drink with one of those ducks you've shot?
That's an interesting, I watched, well, never mind. I can't go into too many stories, but I would say Abraham Lincoln.
There you go. We'll take that.
And there's a reason for it.
Go ahead.
I actually bring his name up when I'm doing the campus tours. And I'm thinking, yeah, this is perfect. And this just would be perfect for this day and age. I think it was so interesting that when he was the president, and they had a civil war and all these people were killing each other. Little more division than what we got in Congress right now,
More.
And we hadn't gotten to that point, but can you imagine if everybody on one side of the aisle had somebody on the other side of the aisle come down and destroy their property and kill people that their friends and family? And then finally it all came to an end. And the guy that was responsible for sending the group down there to do that was going to tell you how we were going to fix it. And there was a guy by the name of Andrew Stevenson that was the vice president of the Confederacy, and Lincoln found him and said, look, we got to put this together, and you are the one guy that I've met out of all the people in the Confederacy that can understand how important it is that we fix everything. And I can't fix it unless you guys show me how we're going to fix it. And he goes, I want you, and you tell me who to appoint to my cabinet from the South. And everybody that he had appointed was from the other side of the aisle, and that's who he worked with. He was the only guy that was from the North that actually worked with the Reconstruction.
Well, it reminds me of the story.
And I think I'd like to hear what Lincoln would say about that now.
Well, I think it did work because I was at a party in Williamsburg, Colonial Williamsburg, and my friend who was the host of the party, he pulled me aside and he said, see that guy right there? And I said, yeah. See those two guys talking? I said, yeah. He said, we see the one guy on the left. He said, that's the direct lineal descendant of Robert E. Lee. And then he said, that guy on the right, that's the direct lineal descendant of Ulysses S. Grant. And they're sitting there talking to one another.
Well, they were in West Point together.
Well, they were, but these were the years later after the Civil
War,
the descendants. Do you remember Matt Buck?
Of course I do. And I was
Okay.
wondering what I could actually tell about him if I got
Okay.
that from
Well, I could actually give you something here. I remember him just absolutely tearing it up at juniors. He was the talk of juniors. He did a tremendous job. You probably remember the year, I don't.
It was in
And then
Florida.
and then he came to nationals the next week or whatever, and he literally, well, I'm going to use your words, he stunk it up at nationals. And somehow I was there right next to you when you spoke to him. Do you remember the glorious words that you said to him? Or do you want
Oh,
me to
wow.
prompt you a little bit more?
See how good your memory is.
Well, if I remember right, let's see, he was at junior nationals,
And he
right?
tore it up. He tore it up. He was on fire.
Yeah, he
And
won
then
the 200 breaststroke.
the next week he was like I don't know, 3 seconds slower in 100 breast. I'll give you a little more prompting. He came up and you started off and you said, Matt, you're having a terrible meet. And he said, but I've never been prouder of you. I thought it was a great coaching moment. Do you remember this?
I do.
Do you want to go on? Because it was
Well,
great. Matt walked away from that moment, and the weight that was on his shoulders was lifted. And I was like, that was awesome, Harvey.
the thing is, he wanted to go to national, but I didn't want him to go to nationals just to do one event. And it was his best event. But he was still the kind of kid that was horrible at everything else, but he had junior cuts, I think. I want to say the 200 IM, the 100 fly, and the 200 breast. And I said, I'd rather take you where you could swim 3 events for your meet than where you were going to do one. And I'd like to focus you on that. And I said, because I think people need to know that you can swim other stuff. And he ended up not finaling, but he got a second swim in his 200 IM and his 100 fly. And then he swam the 200 breast and he won it. And so when he went to the next meet, obviously he realized that, okay, this was probably, not necessarily what our goal was. Your goal was to catch you up to your 100 breast. And let's become a little bit more of a swimmer that could actually do everything you needed to do in practice. And I was proud of him just because of what he'd done all year. And I said, one swim doesn't make your season. And I said, but the fact how resilient you are and how you're, it's more about his resilience. It's more about his love of the sport. And it's more about his will to compete. And I always tell kids, you're only as good as you are on your worst day.
Yeah, I remember you told him, he said, the great thing about what you've done is you're having a bad meet, but you haven't dragged anybody else down and you aren't showing that you're having a bad meet. And he said, and I couldn't be prouder of you. It was just a great moment. I'll let you go on that one. Let's go back to the relationship between you and Jack. You and Jack are kind of inextricably linked in everybody's, in everybody's eye. You never swam together. I realized that. He finished, you started. I know you guys assistant coach. To my eye, there was a kind of symbiosis that you two made look easy. Was it really that way? You guys seem to get along so well together.
Well, it was. I mean, we started out and we were coaching a group of girls that lost to Burnell College. Our school record for the girls when we started coaching was a 6:35 in the 500 and a 28:6 in the 50-yard freestyle.
Jeff couldn't get that today.
And we were
Huh?
both, neither one of us were married, and we both grew up with 2 brothers. And we just wondered why they cried every day. We were like, what's going on? But we both loved sports. We both enjoyed each other's company. And back then, it wasn't like you got your own hotel room. We shared a room. We shared a room back when other people were getting separate rooms. And, and we were driving the vans. We didn't have buses. And, and I remember us taking the girls. We got stranded in Tennessee and we didn't have enough money to keep our rooms. So we put all them in one room and me and Jack in the other. And we said, well, we wish we could have more space for y'all, but we can't put y'all in with us. And we just were laughing about how pissed off they probably are. We had 18 girls in one room and we had our own beds. It was the right thing to do. And the one thing that I knew if I was going to work for Jack, my job was to just be anywhere he couldn't be and do the best I could when there was a spot. And pretty much, I think we just knew each other's personalities well. where we could get the best out of each other. And we could tell before anything happened if he knew where he needed to be from looking at where I needed to be. I knew where he needed to be. We could get around and make sure everybody was getting taken care of and every kid was getting coached. And we never got tired of telling stories. We both had enough friends and where, we'd go our separate ways lots of times and then, it'd be back, but we were back at the pool all the time. So, there was constant communication about how we wanted to do things, what do we want to change. We'd come in with a practice and then we'd talk about, we need to do this. We can't have them go home swimming like this and making this mistake 15 times today, that kind of stuff. But we would talk about that, but we both laughed a lot together.
Yeah, it's like 40 years, like almost a marriage, a relationship
9
together.
years,
Yeah.
was till I retired from Georgia. And then, I guess I'm getting close into 47 years as far as coaching in general. But, it was the only job I ever had. I worked with Jack every year with the only job I ever had. The fact that I knew he trusted me when he couldn't be there, and the more kids we had doing well at the international level where he was having to be gone, every 4 years for the whole Olympic training stuff. He knew he could leave me there and I would step right up, but he'd never get me to say anything negative about him to a kid.
I mean, like I said, you guys had to get along, but there was that impression you guys really made it look great, made it look like a great friendship working together to coach those kids.
It was a lot of fun. Now we're in so many different directions now. We barely see each other, but I know day after tomorrow he's going to get honored at the Founders Day luncheon by the president. And he called me about, I guess, when this thing came out. He said, "You heard about that Founders Day thing?" And I said, "Oh yeah." When I saw you and Ann Sweeney, and Ann Sweeney is a lady that was in the School of Education that just did so much for our female swimmers and our male swimmers that were in the School of Education. And she talked to our recruits and they're going in together to be honored. And so immediately I said, "Hell, Jack, as soon as I saw the RSVP, I already in and I'll be there." He goes, "I'm going to make damn sure you knew it's going to be there." So there's still times we want to get together and everything. Yeah, he's traveling, he's doing all kinds of things, and I'm a little bit more around here playing with the age group kids. So, but we don't see each other as much. But then when we do, it's it's just like we were there with each other the whole last week at practice.
I love that. So obviously, coaching has been a huge part of your life, 47 years. And I'm a GA right now at Millersville. This is my first year, been here for a couple months. What advice do you have for young coaches getting into the profession of swimming?
I would think focus on your athletes and not what's going on everywhere else. Especially in this day and age, there's so much stuff out there. Come in every day and take care of them because that's what you can control, and you can't control everything else, and you can get overwhelmed with the other things that are going on. But you can certainly make every kid's going to end up improving at a different level that you have. Everybody's going to go. It's going to take more time for them to get, they shouldn't be concerned with how long it takes them to get from that end of the pool to that end of the pool. It's what do you do every day that's going to change you into the person that's going to succeed when you're done with this. And I consistently feel like I have to say every kid's name. I have to be standing over every single lane before I leave practice. I've got another guy and we kind of do the weave. It's amazing the things I've seen. And one thing I've seen, I've got kids right now that aren't nearly as fast as the kids that I've coached in Georgia, but to watch them move as a group and how much they care about each other, I couldn't be more prouder of a group of kids and, and be more fulfilled with a group that I'm watching work right now because we've got kids that are junior national level all the way down to just making their state cuts and about 25 kids. But there's not a clique. I see all kids in different lanes. I see them all caring about each other, and I've never seen a fight between any of them.
Wow.
So, assuming that your arrival at Georgia was the big bang moment of the move forward, when did you feel that the Georgia program was really gaining greater national momentum? You mentioned that the team records were horrible when you guys get there. Can you point to a time, a period when you felt like, all right, we're moving forward, it is on its way?
Okay, I'll tell you, It started the second year.
Yeah.
Jack talked our athletic director into giving us money, and he sent me up to junior nationals in Syracuse. And he goes, okay, this is the time. We got to start getting some kids. And I go up there, and this, of course, this is back when coaches went on the deck and they were standing, and you remember, Jeff, they were standing between the competition pool and the warm down pool, and they were grabbing kids to talk with them before they could get to the warm down pool. And it would be two Olympic coaches heading for the same kid trying to do this. And here I am down here on the deck, and we suck, and nobody knows who me or Jack are. So the first day, Jack goes, well, what do you think, Harv? I said, Jack, all the best coaches are here, and they're all going right these kids. I said, there's a line just to get of good coaches trying to get past the great guy. I said, I don't know what. I got a plan, though. He goes, well, you better think of something. We spent a shitload of money to get you here and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. So the next day, I just watched the first heat, wanted to see who got last. And I went over to the warm down pool and looked for the kid with, crying and snot coming out of her nose. And I walked over and my deal was I just go, look, I know you had a bad race, and I know you feel horrible right now. I'm not your coach, but I will tell you this. The coaches are all looking for the kids like you, and I'm one of them, that are going to have a rough go of things and how resilient you're going to be the rest of the meet. And I'm going to let you know right now, we're building a team up down in Georgia, and you can go through the rest of the meet knowing that someone is going to call you after this meet's over.
Wow.
And so I want you to have a great meet. All you got to do is give me your phone number. Let me write it down, and I'll be there for you if you need me. Now, you want to know how this went? Sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Not one kid gave me their phone number. So I come back and I go, Jack, the worst kids here. I mean, number 108 out of 108 does not want to hear from us. So what we did, we got back home. And Jack immediately starts calling all of his friends that are coaching club, or all the club coaches he knew growing up. And he said, who do you have on your team that nobody's calling? But that's the kid that you love to watch walk out on the deck every day. And that's the kid that everybody on the team, they're going to be there every day. They never have to miss practice for school. They just got it done. And everybody wants to be in their lane, and everybody wants them on their team. We want that kid. One of the last kids I recruited, as good as our team was Callie Dickinson. And Jack Roach told us that, Harvey, Jack, this is the kid that you're going to want. And she finished up being SEC Scholar Athlete of the Year. She ended up, scoring at NC2As, and she was one of the ones that was never really getting called that much. And so it stayed that way. But the thing was, when you got kids like that, you'd have somebody that was a stud, and they would come visit, and they'd think, well, I'll go to Georgia, but they're not really that good. And then they would leave. And a kid like Christy Kowal got there and wasn't planning on coming to Georgia at all. As a matter of fact, she was flying down and her flights kept getting canceled. I'm not even sure we got there on the day she was supposed to get there. When she got there, she liked the kids on the team so much that that's why she came. I mean, she had a great relationship with Jack and had some confidence, but she knew for a fact that she wanted to be with those kids. And the one thing I always told kids when you're trying to make a decision and it was getting to the end and they visited everywhere and they were all confused, I'd say, look, you're the only one that knows where you need to be, but you don't know how to ask yourself the right questions. And I said, let's face it, when Dominique Wilkins goes and wherever he went to college, he didn't have to have some coach teach him how to dunk. He was going to be really good everywhere he went. You're really good. You're not going to have to be told how to swim. But what's going to be important, you're probably going to be good everywhere you go. Now, so the question is, if you're going to be good everywhere you're going to go and you're going to improve everywhere, and I think that, you think that, why wouldn't you go where you're going to be the happiest? Think to yourself, where would it be the most fun to be a NC2A champion, valedictorian, and have the prettiest girl or boy for your boyfriend or girlfriend? Where, if everything went perfect, where would it be the most fun for it to go perfect? Because let's just think you're going to do it. It's going to go perfect. Think about that. Where would it be the most fun to do it? Now, Let's go the other way around. In 4 years, you're going to go maybe through some of the most biggest obstacles and challenges and things you'll have to face that may be greater than anything you've ever had to face. Think about if everything could go wrong, did go wrong. Where would you want to be then? And then after your visit, go to imagination land and think about that at each school, and then look in the mirror and decide where you want to go. And wherever you go, I'm going to congratulate you because I'll know you're going to the right place for the right reasons. And if it's us, that's great. And if it's not, I'll certainly respect you, and I'll want you to go fast wherever you go.
Wow. And that's all we have for today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. Harvey, we really enjoyed talking to you and listening and learning about all the amazing stories and the lessons in your coaching career down south. If anyone would like to follow us on Instagram, it's _current_conversations_. Also, Jeff's book, An Unsentimental Journey, is available on Substack. Again, thank you all so much for listening, and catch us next week for episode 7. See ya.